Have you ever stopped to think that sometimes silence can be more seductive than 1,000 words? Most men believe that winning over a woman depends on catchy phrases, funny pickup lines, or some magic technique copied from the internet. But what if I told you that the real power lies in saying nothing? That sounds strange, perhaps even counterintuitive. And that's why it works. The world is full of voices trying to get attention, but few are able to stand out with their posture alone. The truth is hard. If you have to talk too much to get noticed, you may be using the wrong tool. The most intelligent and selective women are not impressed by small talk. They feel energy, observe attitude, and notice how a man positions himself. And that is where the secret of those who truly master the art of seduction lies. This video is not for everyone. It is for those who are tired of seeming forced, of being ignored, of speaking and never being heard. Here, you will discover how to transform your presence into a silent message that screams masculinity, security, and value. And the best part, without having to invent characters, without having to become an extrovert. In the next few minutes, you'll learn how small gestures, looks, posture, and even the way you breathe can have such a profound impact that she'll remember you even after a simple date. All this with real, human, and applicable strategies. No more relying on luck. Now it's time to become the kind of man who doesn't need to speak because the whole world listens when he enters the scene. But before you start using this to your advantage, let me show you what really makes this all work. It's common to see guys racking their brains thinking that the secret to winning over a woman is in the branded clothes or the car they drive. But the truth is different. What really moves a woman's heart is behavior. Yes, the way a man carries himself, speaks, and positions himself in the world. This says much more about him than any luxury accessory. Women feel from afar when a man has presence and confidence. Have you ever seen a seemingly normal man without great physical attributes or wealth attract women easily? Well, yes, this happens because he exudes masculinity, an alpha posture, and an impressive sense of direction. Personal development is reflected in the look in his eyes, the tone of his voice, even the way he walks. It is a silent but powerful combination that activates something deep in women. Seduction, in this case, is a silent dance between masculine energy and feminine sensitivity. It has nothing to do with ostentation, but with authenticity. A man of value does not try to prove himself, he simply is, and this certainty, this tranquility of someone who knows what he wants, is worth more than any imported watch on his wrist. Now, this doesn't mean that appearance doesn't count for anything. Hygiene, self-care, and personal style do count, but they are complementary. Think of it like a pretty dish that only looks good but has no flavor. It may impress at first, but it doesn't hold your interest. What really charms is the coherence between what a man looks like and what he delivers with his actions. And that's exactly where the seduction game begins. When she realizes that you're not trying to look like something, but that you're simply living with purpose, and when she feels that, something changes. But don't worry, that's just the beginning. Because what really makes this behavior shine comes from within. You know what? Confidence is not arrogance, and self-esteem is not walking around boasting about yourself. True confidence is silent. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. It just exists. When a man walks with his shoulders held high, speaks clearly, and knows his worth, it shows. And the funny thing, women sense this before any conversation even begins. Imagine a guy who walks into a room and, without saying a word, everyone feels that he is different. This doesn't come from ego. It comes from the personal development he has cultivated over the years. He has faced setbacks, overcome failures, and gotten back up with more wisdom. And this has shaped a solid masculinity that doesn't need applause. It is this calm but intense energy that deeply attracts. True self-esteem is built in the silence of routine, in habits, in books read, in difficult decisions made without an audience. Men of value are not born ready, they are forged. And the more this man knows himself, the more attractive he becomes, because he transmits self-love. And self-love, ironically, is what most awakens the love of others. After all, how can a woman trust someone who doesn't even believe in himself? Want a practical example? Stop seeking validation on social media. Stop asking too much if you look good, if she liked it, if you did it right. Start making decisions for yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror firmly and saying, "I respect myself." This simple habit, repeated, changes your posture, and this, believe me, changes your energy. And it's this energy, this confidence that doesn't scream but pulsates. It's what paves the way for true seduction. Because after that, every gesture you make, every word you say, will carry a new weight. But before you say anything, there's something even more powerful you can do. Sometimes, all a woman needs to see a man in a different light is a sudden change, a behavior that breaks the mold. Imagine a guy who is always shy and reserved, who suddenly starts to act more confident. You don't have to become a different man overnight. You just need to, for example, start looking into his eyes firmly, or stop justifying yourself all the time. This change in attitude usually has an impact. Surprise generates curiosity, and curiosity is the beginning of seduction. When you change your attitude without having to explain anything, you generate a magnetic effect. She starts to think, what happened to him? And that's when the attraction begins. A man of value doesn't announce his evolution. He shows it. He transforms his actions, his gestures, his energy, and those around him feel it. Think of it as a system upgrade. You don't have to announce that you've changed, you just act like you've evolved. At work, at the gym, in casual encounters, start speaking more decisively, smiling less out of obligation and more out of intention. This may feel strange at first, but it's a positive kind of strangeness, the kind that intrigues and attracts. It's like you're breaking out of the predictable mold, and women thrive on predictability. When you show that you react differently now, that you're no longer affected by petty criticism, that you respond with presence and clarity, something changes. Suddenly, you become the one she can't read easily, and that's gold in the game of seduction. And this change is just the trigger, because your body, my friends, will start talking to you. And if it speaks in the right language, you won't even have to say much. You can say whatever you want, but if your body doesn't follow suit, she'll notice. Body language is more honest than any rehearsed speech. A man can say he's confident, but if he looks away, crosses his arms, or fidgets too much, his body gives away insecurity. Women pick up on these signals with a sensitivity that many men underestimate. Imagine you're on a date. You might be saying something interesting, but if your shoulders are slumped, your torso is hunched over, and your posture is closed off, the message you're really sending is one of self-devaluation. And that undermines the seduction before it even begins. A man of value, on the other hand, exudes confidence before he even opens his mouth. It's his posture, the rhythm of his movements, and his steady gaze that say, "I'm here and I don't need to prove myself." Body language is a direct reflection of self-esteem, and it can be trained. Start walking with more conscious steps. Keep your chest slightly open. Stop hiding your hands in your pockets all the time. Do you know that exercise where you stand in front of the mirror and practice standing up straight? It works. It seems simple, but it changes your energy, and that reverberates in your relationships. A good example of this is leaders and speakers. Many of them are not handsome or physically impressive, but they have presence, and this presence is almost always built by the way they occupy space, how they move, how they position themselves. You can practice this in your daily life. When you are in line, wait with your chin up. When you are seated, avoid slouching. All of this communicates who you are without having to say it. And that's where the magic begins, when you discover that your body can speak for you with much more power than any rehearsed words. And if you learn the right gestures, every little action you take becomes a silent invitation to interest. But what exactly should your body start doing? You know what really makes a difference? It's the details. And when it comes to seduction, every micro-behavior is a message being sent. Smiling, for example, is important, but only when it's genuine. Smiling too much conveys neediness. Smiling occasionally at the right moment shows that you're in control of the situation. It's like saying, "I'm comfortable and you can be too." A flexible body posture conveys naturalness, no military stiffness or looking like a puppet in a military post. A man of value has a calm masculinity who moves fluidly, as if each gesture were in tune with the confidence he carries inside, arms loose, torso erect, without exaggeration. Have you noticed that a man in command doesn't need to be nervous? He is simply present. That is seductive. And eye contact, oh, that's the game changer. When a man holds his gaze steadily, not invading, but not evading, he creates a connection. It's as if he's saying, "I see you," and this moves women in an almost instinctive way. Here's a practical tip. In the first few seconds of a conversation, look her directly in the eyes and hold your gaze a little longer than usual. This alone creates an emotional impact. Slow, controlled movements are another sign of confidence. When someone moves quickly, it conveys anxiety. An alpha moves calmly. He's not in a rush to please anyone, and that, ironically, pleases them even more. Try this when you're in a social setting. Pick up your glass lightly, sit up straight, walk like you know where you're standing. The room notices, and so does she. Finally, the good perfume. It may seem superficial, but smell is one of the senses most connected to emotional memory. A striking and unpleasant smell can completely transform the perception of those nearby. Choose woody or slightly citrusy fragrances, such as Sauvage Dior or Bleu Chanel. A smell can say, "This man is unforgettable." But even with all this, there is one element that separates those who stand out from those who fade away. In a world where almost everyone acts, speaks, and dresses the same way, being different has become a strategic advantage. Seduction begins when you stop trying to fit in and start standing out. Think of a shelf full of identical products. The eye goes straight to the one that has something unique. It works the same way with men. Women are tired of seeing repetition. When a man of value, authentic, who shows personality without trying, shows up, she notices it right away. Being unique is not about wearing fancy clothes or using made-up slang. It's about having identity. It's liking things that aren't fads. It's having opinions that don't change with the wind. For example, a guy who plays the guitar, reads about stoicism, and still knows how to cook well, has already stood out from 90% of the others. But this only works when it's true. A woman can tell when your authenticity is real, and that inspires respect even before romantic interest. The secret is to cultivate interests that reveal who you are. Want to become more interesting? Invest time in learning something that few people master. It could be a martial art like jiu-jitsu, a creative hobby like painting or photography, or even cooking, like making homemade pasta. These things become topics, experiences, and stories, and women love men with good stories. Being the different one is being memorable, and in the game of love, being remembered is half the battle. You don't have to become a celebrity, but you do have to be someone who provokes different feelings. A woman can meet 10 guys in a month, but only one will turn her head a few days later. And usually, it's the one who comes out of the obvious. That's the guy who builds relationships, who generates real love. And it is precisely this type of man who awakens the desire to be close, to go deeper, But this construction is only sustainable when it comes from within. And that is where a factor comes in that completely transforms this journey. A factor that goes beyond appearance, beyond body language. A factor that shapes who you truly become. The basis of lasting seduction lies in personal development. There are no shortcuts. A man can be attractive through his looks or sharp conversation, but only those who have depth remain interesting. When you invest in knowledge, self-knowledge and life experiences, everything changes. Your speech gains weight, your gaze conveys direction, and your presence becomes magnetic. You become the kind of man who doesn't need to explain himself. He imposes himself by who he is. Want a clear example? While many people spend hours on social media scrolling through random videos, a man of value is reading something that feeds his mind. How about starting with The Ego is Your Enemy by Ryan Holiday or The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene? This not only broadens your worldview, but also refines your perception of human relationships. And this perception, my friend, even shines through in the way you hold a glass. Personal development also means stepping out of your comfort zone. Taking that course you've always put off, learning a new skill, putting yourself in situations where you need to solve real problems. All of this builds masculinity. And believe me, women notice. They feel when they're in front of a man who hasn't stopped in time, who seeks to be better, not to impress, but because he respects his own journey. And remember, everything you are sells, the way you behave, dress, express yourself. All of this is silent marketing of your personality. And here we are not talking about manipulation. We are talking about coherence. When what you say, do and feel are in alignment, you become irresistible. And that has more power than 1,000 memorized flirting phrases. This kind of solid construction, built with real effort, transforms the common man into a true magnet for attention. And when this foundation is firm, even silence is seductive. Because sometimes the greatest power of attraction is not in what you say, but in what you convey without saying anything. Have you realized that the game isn't about what you say, but about who you become? True seduction doesn't come from the lips. It emanates from the inside out. And now that you know this, will you continue to act like you're invisible? Or will you take the place of a man who gets noticed without having to try? The decision is yours. How many opportunities have you let slip because you tried too hard to please others, because you tried to be the nice guy instead of being a man of value? How many times have you wanted to be remembered, but ended up just another person in the crowd? Enough of that. It's time to let your presence speak louder than your words. It's time to turn the tables. So tell me, are you going to apply this today, or are you going to wait for another woman to ignore you to finally wake up? Because, believe me, the ones who really pay attention don't want a guy who talks too much. They want a man who exudes confidence even in silence. And that man can and should be you. If this content touched you inside, made you see that it is possible to change the game with strategy and truth, then do the following. Subscribe to the channel now, activate notifications, and stick with us. Because here, we will continue to reveal the secrets that no one told you about being a respected, admired, and naturally desired man. Are you ready to become that man? Or are you going to keep waiting for permission to be what you were born to be?